this webinar for the audience while we wait for additional participants to come in. Thank you so much, and requesting the Secretariat to play the video.
Gazing upon our world from a distance, it appears peaceful and calm. But the reality is far different. The repercussions of climate change are approaching us all, and we all contribute to this impact. By 2050, projections indicate that over 3 billion people will reside in various urban centers in the Asia-Pacific region alone. Urban activities are a key contributor to climate change. Cities are responsible for 75% of global CO2 emissions, with transport and buildings among the most significant contributors. And since 2012, the Asia-Pacific region has collectively been responsible for more than half of global greenhouse gas emissions yearly. The repercussions of climate change are imminent and befalling us all. 6 Asian nations are among the top 10 countries most affected by climate change, with the Philippines ranked the 4th and Thailand ranked the 9th. It's time to act, and we have a joint responsibility to address climate change through urban development planning and design guided by climate data. That's where Urban Act comes in. Urban Act, or the Integrated Urban Climate Action for Low Carbon and Resilient Cities project, is a regional project that aims to support the transformation towards low carbon and resilient urban development and contribute to implementing each partner country's nationally determined contributions and the Sustainable Development Goals. Funded by the International Climate Initiative, or ICI, commissioned by the German Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action, or BMWK, Urban Act is implemented in 5 partner countries: China, India, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Thailand, with a duration spanning 5 years from 2022 to 2027. We aim to achieve 4 critical outputs. These outputs include improving the institutional environment for climate-sensitive urban development, using evidence-based, inclusive, climate-sensitive, spatial and urban planning, identifying project concepts for urban climate action investment, and enhancing knowledge through regional networking, exchange, and learning. Our collaborative partnership comprises the Deutsche Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit GmbH, or GIZ, as a project leader, and the international partners consisting of the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, or ESCAP, United Cities and Local Governments Asia Pacific, or UCLG ASPAC, the University of Stuttgart and TU Dortmund University, and national partners in each of the project countries. To promote and showcase a sustainable integration of climate change into urban development, Urban Act implements its support in 14 pilot cities across the 5 countries, recognizing the unique context of the partner countries and aiming to improve the country's specific policies and regulatory frameworks. Furthermore, we engage in joint operations with the Indonesia-Malaysia-Thailand Growth Triangle, or IMTGT, implementing initiatives in 6 cities within the IMTGT sub-region. We are all standing on the edge, and every decision and action we take today will shape our future for generations to come. It is not just a choice, it's a collective responsibility that falls on each of our shoulders. It's time for us to unite and journey towards low-carbon, resilient urban development. Join us in the Urban Act, Joint Action for Climate-Friendly and Resilient Cities. We are stronger if we are together.
Very good. Thank you so much. And let me just, on behalf of the Urban Act Partnership, welcome all of you from Asia Pacific, but also globally, joining us today for the second webinar in our Climate Conscious Cities series on the topic of From Waste to Wealth, Innovating for Inclusive, Low Carbon, and Resilient Waste Management Solutions. My name is Omar Sadiq, and I am not only your moderator for today's webinar session, but also the Urban Act project manager from UN ESCAP, based in Bangkok in the Sustainable Urban Development section. We're really pleased to have more than 230 registrations received for this webinar, which really shows a keen interest in the topic. And the webinar series is part of the broader Urban Act project, which was mentioned in the video. And just to say that, we are not looking at this webinar series just as a very useful discussion, and then we all go back to our desks and business as usual. But we are actually using this to support identification of new priorities, strengthen existing priorities also for our technical assistance initiatives in the project aimed at supporting multi-level climate action, planning, and financing. And of course, waste management is a key part of that across not only the 14 cities and 5 countries of the project, but across the region and the world. The objectives of this webinar are to increase the understanding and knowledge of participants to build integrated climate action for both low carbon and resilient cities, so both mitigation and adaptation, communicate and raise awareness of key innovations on and emerging topics on action for low carbon and resilient cities. So clearly waste management is not an emerging topic. It has been around for quite some time. However, we're going to be showing new innovations and new, both in terms of policy, practice, and technologies in this webinar. We'd also like to build and enhance partnerships between the Urban Act Project Consortium and with relevant organization, institutions, and experts outside of the Urban Act project currently, and we're really pleased to have Waste Concern, who we've been partnering with for, I think, over 15 years, maybe close to 20 years now, on integrated solid waste management solutions for Asian cities. And also WeGo, Women in Informal Employment Globalizing Organizing, who we've collaborated with before on our Closing the Loop project to address issues around plastic waste in the region, and of course our e-learning course, which we'll put the link also in the chat. We'd also like to showcase good practices, learnings, and innovations from within the project to a wider audience as well. So also, looking at ways that we can, the knowledge within the Urban Act project doesn't stay within the project, but is also available to others. And we're working very closely with the Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand Growth Triangle, the IMTGT, through a collaboration with the Cities Climate Finance Gap Fund, which focuses on solid waste management in 6 cities across that sub-regional cooperation. We do have upcoming webinars on a range of highly relevant topics, not only on waste management. Our previous webinar last month was on COP outcomes for cities. Next month, we will be looking at topics of city-to-city exchange and matchmaking for climate finance, and then onwards to climate-sensitive urban planning and many more. So we look forward to your continued participation in this regard. As many of you have noted while you were registering, you were asked questions when you were registering for this event about what you would like to learn and hear in the webinar. Thank you to all that responded to those, and this really helped us as the organizing team and the expert speakers to make sure the content is as relevant as possible to you as the audience. And these questions also fit our intention to deliver webinars as practical sessions driven by input of our participants and through peer-to-peer learning with practitioners in the field and experts. Just a few housekeeping remarks, just to note that webinars are recorded and they will be available with slides for viewing following each webinar, if you'd also like to share to participants who couldn't make it. And feel free to use the chat box during the webinar to interact with the other participants. But importantly, please use the Q&A function, which is a separate button on the bottom bar of your Zoom screen, if you would like to write specific questions to the panelists. And we will have an interactive segment coming up. Before I hand it over to the colleagues, I would just like to give a bit of framing for this topic. And, I think all of us can agree that the urgency of this conversation and the climate impacts of waste cannot be overstated. Waste management has really emerged as a pivotal battleground in our fight against climate change. Not only in the Asia-Pacific region, but annually the world's cities produce over 2 billion tons of waste, much of which ends up in landfills, dumps, or incinerators through a very linear process of take, make, and dispose. This not only squanders valuable resources, but also poses severe health risks to citizens and stands as a significant contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. Science tells us our current waste management practices are a major source of carbon emissions. In fact, the waste sector is responsible for about a fifth of global methane emissions, a greenhouse gas with 80 times the warming power of carbon dioxide. So tackling methane emissions is imperative for achieving our climate goals of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade. However, waste management often takes a back seat in many local and regional governments' emissions reductions plans. And as the window for climate action rapidly narrows, we must recognize that waste management provides a unique opportunity for swift and effective interventions. Unlike many environmental challenges, proven solutions for reducing greenhouse gas emissions through waste management exist today, and they don't hinge on waiting for new technologies. Regardless of the level of decentralization in your country, waste management is usually one of the key functional assigned responsibilities of local government. And yet we hear from many local governments that while eating up a majority or significant part of the municipal budget, there's often very poor outcomes in terms of coverage and collection that the city struggles with. And at the same time, we know that we only don't want a circular economy, but we want an inclusive circular waste economy. So how can municipal and regional governments ensure a just and inclusive transition towards zero waste in partnership with the informal workers in that economy, and also with all actors and stakeholders? So with that, I would really like to hand over to my colleague Maqsood Sinha from Waste Concern based in Bangladesh. Maqsood is the co-founder and executive director of Waste Concern to take us through their first presentation, which will cover linkages between waste management and climate change, and really innovative technologies such as integrated resource recovery centers and the like. So without further ado, it's really my pleasure to welcome an old friend for all of us here at ESCAP, Maqsood, to start his presentation on behalf of Waste Concern. Maqsood, over to you.
Good afternoon, Omar. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank ESCAP and other organizers to invite me as us Waste Concern to share our experience. And my colleague Iftikhar Enatullah, due to an urgent meeting, he could not attend. So he will try his best to attend at the end of this session. He will try if he can make time. So our presentation is based on our long experience since 1995. We're working in our Bangladesh as well as some Asia Pacific country in partnership with the ESCAP. So there is. I want to change. Can we change? Yeah. And my presentation, our presentation is divided into few parts. First of all, I would like to talk about current practice of solid waste management in Asia and the Pacific region, what is happening. And today, so we are talking about climate change, the link between solid waste and climate change, we will describe a little bit. And what is the waste to resource approach we are following? And then we will discuss how waste to resource approach reduces greenhouse gas emissions, how we can relate it to the greenhouse gas, and examples of integrated resource recovery facility. And also later on, we developed it into integrated landfill and resource recovery facility. That we will share the experience with you all. And then we'll discuss about the way forward. Next slide. So I think already Omar mentioned about, and the video mentioned that we already worldwide, we generate 5.57 million tons of waste per day. And this is a World Bank information. And in developing country, we are generating almost 3.6 million tons per day. And more is almost more than half we are generating. And if you look at the waste, 60 to 70% is organic, which is biodegradable. That's the issue. And then just look at this. Can you show my? Can I show my pointer? Can you allow me to show the pointer, or can you see the pointer? Okay. Then you can see that on the top left, high income countries, you can see that the organic, the part which is food and green waste is almost 32%. And in upper middle income country, it is 64%. Next, and lower middle income countries, it is almost 63%. And low income country, it is 56%. And along with that, if you look at the composition, you can see that plastic is another issue, which is gradually increasing. In Bangladesh also, per capita consumption of plastic has increased, and it is creating a severe problem for our country, pollution. And as well as in other Asian countries, therefore, feeling that. In low-income country, you can see the 7% plastic amount, and other countries varies between 12% in lower middle-income countries. So plastic and organic matter, two waste type of waste which is focused in our approach. Next, you can go. Just there is a link between solid waste. Just we want to mention that solid waste sector is a major source of emission, and methane and black carbon are short-lived climate pollutant that remain in the atmosphere. And waste sector accounts for 11% of the global anthropogenic methane emissions, and 5% is around from black carbon. And in terms of total contribution, you can see that solid waste sector is a major source of emission. 2% of all the greenhouse gas emission globally. Solid waste is responsible for that. And solid waste infrastructures are vulnerable to extreme weather events. This is experienced in many countries, that due to climate change issues, flooding and other problems, you find that there are waste-related problems we are facing. And improvement in solid waste can contribute to climate change mitigation and enhance climate resilience. We strongly believe that if we can improve this situation, solid waste management system. Next slide. This is one of the World Bank published report, and where it is mentioned that you can see that the potent greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide, waste is responsible. Key emission sources are fossil fuel from vehicles, and then anaerobic decomposition of waste. If the waste decomposed in the open landfill, open dump site, it creates different kind of methane gas. And waste burning is another issue. It creates carbon dioxide. And methane is generated from anaerobic digestion from this kind of organic waste. It's remained like that, anaerobic digestion. It generates a lot of methane. And black carbon is also one of the issues. Waste burning, it generates black carbon. So these are all linked with somehow climate change, that waste is responsible for that. Next. So you can see this in the diagram that present situation in developing country, in the source, different kind of waste, municipal waste generates, and mainly it is mixed. Source segregation is not relevant, most of the countries. So this is one of the issue which is creating problem due to lack of source segregation. Waste is becoming mixed and it loses its value and contaminates. So and then mixed waste is going to the demountable containers or transfer station, and then it is collected and going to the landfill site. And this is just you generate waste, collect and transport and dispose it in the landfill. So this is creating all kinds of problems. Next slide. So these are the problems, few problems which is responsible. Like if you dump your waste in the open landfill, it creates leachate, and the leachate, toxic water, polluted water, it may pollute your surface water or groundwater. Methane, if the waste is unattended in the landfill, open landfill site, due to this, it creates methane, and it is going to the atmosphere, and bad odor is there, and other kind of diseases it spreads, like spreading more than 40 diseases due to this kind of unattended, unmanaged landfill site. So these are the few problems we just wanted to share with you to talk about the problem. Next. So turning challenge, we believe that all kind of, these are the challenge we are facing, but we can turn it into opportunity. At present, I showed you the current paradigm is focused on end-of-pipe solution, is not sustainable, and overlooks the enormous potential of turning waste into resource. And then there is a potential of informal sector. In our country, in developing country, you find a lot of people are working in this sector. We call them informal, like waste collectors, junk dealers, waste worker, those and recyclers. They recovers valuable material from the downstream of waste. But the majority portion of the waste does not have a chance to recover because there's a soil unattended. So there are, and technology is not available. So we believe that there is a lot of opportunity to create this waste into a valuable resource. So in the pie diagram, you can see that opportunity is there in food and green waste. In low-income, middle-income countries, a large portion of the waste, which is creating problem, but it can be a resource. Next slide. This is background is that I just shared that since 2007, we were working with ESCAP, UN ESCAP, in partnership with us. We have been promoting decentralized integrated resource recovery facility. We call it Integrated Resource Recovery Facility in secondary cities and small towns in Asia Pacific, with the objective to recover value from waste and provide livelihood opportunity for the urban poor. So our focus is that how we can develop a system where we can involve the informal sector, the community, citizens, government, and all the relevant stakeholders in this kind of activity, so that we can create a win-win situation. An IRC facility is where significant portion, 80 to 90% of the waste can be composted, recycled, and processed in a cost-effective way near the source of generation in a decentralized manner. And it is based on 3R principle: reduce, reuse, recycle. Next slide. So already explained this slide. Just to show you one thing, that in IRC approach, we promote source segregation by involving the community, people, and all the stakeholders, so that we can promote that. And waste is collected from the households, and then it can go to the integrated recycling facility. It can be decentralized, or it can be a little bit larger. We'll share the experiences later on. And we can divert majority of the incoming waste into a resource. Only 10 to 14% will go to the landfill site. So we can reduce the landfill site significantly with this kind of approach and reduce the environmental problem. Next slide. So this kind of IRC, it can be different sizes. So our model, it can be adapted in different type of situation. Like if you have a small community, up to 3 tons per day capacity, you can go for our the IRC model. But it can be medium scale, more than 3 to 20 tons per day. If you want to handle, it can be the technologies adapted in IRC, and also large scale. If it is more than 21 tons per day capacity, up to 250 tons or 300 tons per day, we can carry out this kind of IRC in those cities and towns. Because in every country, you have different sizes of cities and towns and situation. So this model can be adapted in different sizes of population and different types of towns. So, and all the project, apart from this production of compost, biogas, RDF, this model is reducing greenhouse gas. And this is one of the important aspects that by doing this kind of recycling, we can prove that we are reducing amount of carbon emission, and it can be sold in the market. It can generate revenue for this kind of project. Next slide. I don't want to go in detail, but we all know that we try to cluster different kind of technology to address different kind of inputs coming to from the municipal waste to a recycling facility. So you have to take care of most of the type of waste which is incoming, and the technology choice will be depending on the capacity size and also the market. If say for example, if you need more energy, you can go for energy or fertilizer. You can blend technologies in one place. So we can adopt different kind of technology to address organic waste, recyclables, so even soil plastic. We are working on that. Soil plastic, which cannot be recycled, very difficult to recycle. Even waste with high calorific value and fecal sludge. In our large plants, we have added also fecal sludge. Fecal sludge can be co-composted with the organic waste. So our idea is that whatever waste we generate in a municipal town or city, we can address all type of waste in this kind of facility. Next slide. So if you look at this slide, you'll see that the technology, composting, biogas plant, refuse-derived fuel, co-composting, biodiesel plant, pyrolysis, these are all addressing the raw material which is coming from the households and the community. So you can produce economic output like fertilizer, biogas to electricity, fuel in pellet form, compost, biofertilizer, biodiesel fuel. So these are all can be linked with climate change benefit. So you can prove that somehow you're reducing this emission. For example, our experience shows that if you recycle 1 ton of organic waste, at least you can prove that you are reducing half a ton of greenhouse gas. So this is the one of the example I'm showing you that. So if you run a 10-ton plant, you can claim 5 ton you have reduced, but it is depending on which methodology you're taking. Next slide. So with the ESCAP, we have promoted IRC in 6 countries. This is the list, like the blue write-ups are on our baseline study we did in different Vietnam, and also IRC and implemented IRC in Vietnam. And also we conducted baseline study in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Indonesia, and also Bangladesh. And these are the examples where we work together with ESCAP. Next slide. So this is one of the how we progressed. We first in 1995 worked with composting and inorganic waste recycling in Bangladesh, and having that experience in 2005, we partnered with ESCAP to replicate this model in Vietnam, Sri Lanka, and then and also replicated our model in other part of the Bangladesh, closely working with the government of Bangladesh. And then in 2008, the first time we introduced that waste, if you process waste like composting, you can claim that you have reduced carbon emission. And a methodology was developed during that time. We also part of that, and initiated this kind of project where we can prove that you can reduce carbon emission, and there is a methodology is available, mitigation from UNFCCC, so that we established the globally first compost plant in Bangladesh. And then we started work with biogas, how we can, with this kind of IRC, we introduced biogas also to generate energy. And also biodiesel, fecal sludge management, those also were added in the IRC. We thought that it's very important that in a town or city, if you can deal with this kind of like cooking oil, soil plastic, these you don't have to dump it in the landfill or unattended. You can also utilize. So we injected a technology there, how we can also make use of it. And this is one of the examples. It's a plan in Dhaka city, one of the Narayanganj City Corporation. It's a close neighboring city. We we helped our city, and it's also a CDM climate change project. We are replicating this in 64 districts in Bangladesh. So it's a small layout to give you an idea how this process works. So I think the information is there from the, you can get this information. Next slide is that these are the things that source segregation, how we can segregate your waste, and also the transportation. If you want to segregate the waste, you have to transport it in a segregated way and take it to a facility. And this is another fecal sludge management project in Kushtia. We work closely with the ESCAP. We felt that huge amount of nutrient are also we are becoming pollutant. Is the human excreta that can be also used in combination of solid waste, and you can produce good quality fertilizer. And Kushtia city is working on that. We are helping the Kushtia city for that. And other towns are also now Bangladesh replicating this model. Thank you. The next one.
Mr. Maksudi, if you could perhaps offer some concluding remarks, we have to move to the next presentation. Apologies. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Can you? Okay. Just can you go to the last slide? Good. You can look at that last slide. You can go. So before that, no. Please go up. Go up. This one, yeah. So from our experience, this concluding remark, way forward, our experience shows that there should be some policy level change, changing the mindset and paradigm shift towards reduced use of second 3R. Source segregation must be implemented. And we found that most of the municipalities, city corporation are poor, and the manpower and also the financial power, and we have to strengthen that. And co-benefit is very important for this kind of solid waste management projects. We can link it with co-benefits, like different kind of benefits we can get from a recycling this kind of project. And baseline information data is very important, which is missing in most of the countries, developing country. And 3R is very important in the strategy, policy, action plans, which is required for if you want to promote this kind of initiatives. And we call it interministerial coordination is missing. If you deal with solid waste, it is linked with different ministry of energy, Ministry of local government, Ministry of health, Ministry of environment. So there should be some synergy. It is missing in most of the time. And incentives on recycling initiatives is not there. So physical improvement is that if you look at waste, segregation is very important. You have to work with the community. You have to work with the government, local municipality, informal sector. Awareness is very important for that. And waste to resource facilities. We found that public-private partnership is very important, where you can bring in more investment in the country or in a project from private sector. And land is one of the issue, this kind of project. So government should think about that. Soft loan tax incentives are important because this kind of project they don't have level playing field. This is very important. If someone wants to take an initiative, there should be some incentives. And free delivery of waste, we are saying that this kind of facility should be receiving free delivery of waste. In Bangladesh, the projects, we are working in 26 towns, government is delivering free of cost, the waste delivery, and land is provided by them. And technology choice is very important. Wrong technology in the wrong place, you might end up with failure. And informal sector is very important. We must include informal sector in this kind of projects. And products. Legal, we found the level playing field is not there. If you produce fertilizer, you must have some level playing field if you want to market the product with a chemical fertilizer. Energy, renewable energy, or this kind of product, government should look at that so that we can promote this kind of initiatives. So incentives, subsidies are important because if you have that green procurement in a country, it will help a lot to this kind of initiative to operate and sustain. So this is in a nutshell, I tried to share my experience. And in future, if we have more time, we can share in detail the experiences. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maksud. You spoke really about the incentives and subsidies and capacities needed to enable some of these innovative solutions, such as the IRRCs, which have been tested in many cities, secondary cities of varying capacity, and the importance of those solutions to not be technologically driven in a sense, but to also look at what the co-benefits can be in terms of emissions reduction, human health, but also looking at how it can support green livelihoods. And we know that there's a huge segment of the population in our cities that are involved in this material recycling that we often call the informal waste economy. And they have to be part of these solutions in order for us to be able to move forward to that just transition to a 1.5-degree future. And I think that's a very good segue for our next presenter, Ms. Sonia Diaz, who is the Global Waste Specialist and Garbologist at Women in Informal Employment Globalizing Organizing. And Sonia is joining us bright and early from Brazil, and really pleased to hand over to her for us to unpack a bit more about the informal waste economy and what we can do to integrate it and strengthen it. So Sonia, over to you.
Thank you. I apologize about my colleague Shalini Singha, who was supposed to share the floor with me. She is sick and could not attend this event, so apologies. Well, can we go to the next slide? Yeah, thank you. Well, the latest report of the IPCC has highlighted the impacts of climate change in cities and how they are compounded by ongoing challenges already in the city. It's very important for us when talking about climate to really factor in an important an army of environmental agents that are the informal waste speakers. We know that by 2025, 2/3 of the world's population will live in cities, consuming 75% of natural resources and producing half of the world's waste and over half of GHG. We know that waste contributes to climate change: food waste, fashion waste, plastic waste, and the inadequate waste disposal. All of that, the inefficient management of solid waste exacerbates climate impacts on the whole city. And it's thus very important that we do factor in that in our cities of the global south, we have waste speakers who are very important contributors to keeping our cities clean, but also in climate mitigation. And cities is central in addressing climate change challenges. And it's important that we do that in a way that is just and in a way that maximizes the opportunities, the already contribution that these workers give. And in my country, here in Brazil, we call this call for systems that are inclusive. We call them inclusive recycling systems, and we in the importance of inclusive recycling systems is that it helps creating a role, a recognized role for these workers. The next slide, please. So, as I said, the workers in the informal economy, waste speakers, they are very important in terms of contributing to climate change mitigation. The ILO Green Report indicated 15 to 20 million of people worldwide earn their living by recycling waste. And recycling reduces emissions 25 times more than incineration does. So I hope that this, really brings the point of the very important role played by waste speakers. Next slide, please. So we need to start mapping and documenting what is happening in terms of climate change impacts in this sector. And why? Because waste speakers have been very invisible in terms of their contribution. It's both in research and in policy, and we know that they are the most affected by climate change. And we need to start documenting what is happening in terms of how extreme weather events are impacting their work lives. And we also know that although climate change is a global issue, we need to focus on developing strategies for adaptation that are locally based, that take into consideration, the specificities of different places, the specificities of different sectors. So we at WIGO, next slide, please, we decided to start mapping how waste speakers in Brazil have been impacted by extreme climate events. And in collaboration with the University of Sheffield, we conducted a study all over Brazil. It's an exploratory mapping that helped to first understand how waste speakers, what waste speakers know about climate change. Then, and also to understand how are they impacted by different climate events, and what kind of strategies they are developing, and what are the partners that are supporting them. So we carried out a survey in Brazil, which involved all the states of our country. And in addition to the survey, we also did qualitative methods. So we carried out focus group discussions and key informant interviews to have a broader understanding of these issues. Next, please. So I'm going to give you just a few highlights on the findings of our mapping. 58% of the waste speakers that were surveyed, they were women. 8 out of 10 of the waste speakers were Black people. 84% of the waste speakers surveyed belonged to cooperatives or associations. In Brazil, we have a strong movement of waste speakers cooperatives. 56% of the waste speakers surveyed worked regularly collecting in the street. We did the research in terms of trying to find how at different workspaces, how they were impacted. So we surveyed waste speakers working in cooperative settings, in a sorting center, in the streets, and in the open dumps. Next, please. 91% of the waste speakers had experienced extreme weather event in the last 12 months that is the time frame of our research. And the thing that the event that were most mentioned by waste speakers were the heat waves. 85% were said that heat waves were the biggest problems. And the thing of the organized waste speakers, our research tried to understand how those who are organizing to cooperatives are impacted by different climate events, and those that are non-organized. And so amongst the organized, 85% said that heat waves were, the big problem, the biggest problem for them, and 87% of the non-organized. Next one, please. So how are heat waves impacting the work of waste speakers? Reduced productivity, reduced income, impacts on physical health and their well-being. Next one, please. And how are they being helped or not, and by whom? 34% said the private sector played a role in terms of supporting them. Local government played a good role as well in giving support to waste speakers, and NGOs. Next one, please. So how waste speakers understand the role of local governments? Here is a quote from one of the surveyed workers. It says, the city council plays a fundamental role in hiring waste speakers and complying with the national solid waste policy. We, who are Black and poor, don't have access to the means of production. Support from the city council is not charity. Our challenges must be tackled in the economic sphere, not just in the social sphere. So cities, government, they play a crucial role in terms of supporting waste speakers. Next one, please. So what do the research findings show? We see that climate change has concrete impacts on work routine, income, and health. Waste speakers also, they are developing specific strategies to cope with events, but what happens is, because climate change is still not on the radar, and it's not part of climate change, and waste speakers are not really being included in adaptation plans. What workers, the strategies that the workers develop, they are more like improvisations. And there's still a need for a strong and expanded network to solve the structural problems that workers face. it's also a just transition approach will require that we highlight the essential role of waste pickers for cities, the essential role of waste pickers for the environment and also for the local economies. And we need to create mechanisms to prevent them from being the most affected by climate change. In our research, we could see that waste pickers were completely at loss in how they would cope with floods, which, ruin their production. They don't still have, the ways to cope with many of these impacts. Yeah, next slide, please. So, what can cities do to support climate change resilience? We need to start really to document the impacts of climate, extreme weather events, and to make sure that we know what is happening in different workspaces. And we need to start co-producing with the workers adaptation strategies, which might include, depending on the spaces, retrofitting of workspaces. We need food security, climate change urban equipment for workers who work in the streets. We do need, and it was nice to see in the previous speaker, the call for adopting the reuse and reduce the approach. We need to go beyond that, because we need to build solid waste systems that are inclusive. And we need to have inclusive zero waste policies. It's important that we start to an environmental sensitization, and cities can play a role in that. Cities can play a role in remunerating workers, paying for the environmental services that they provide. Also, there is a need for social protection policies and occupational and health approach and emergency relief cash grants. And what can civil society and workers' organizations do? They can develop climate change sensitization. Workers are still at loss about climate change. It's a very abstract, although they feel that is happening, they still not familiarized with the language of climate change and the importance of starting to develop adaptative measures. We need the civil society can co-create with workers adaptation strategies. They can develop gender-sensitive climate change work plans. They can start themselves documenting real impacts experienced by informal workers, so that this can inform national and international plans and agreements. And what can the private sector and donors do? They can push for EPR systems alongside specific climate change interventions. So climate resilient workspaces and adequate PPE is also an important thing that needs to be factored in. And we need to start taking into consideration the importance of living incomes for workers. Donors can create funding lines for climate change sensitive work infrastructure for workers in the informal economy, and capacity building to cope with climate change impacts. Next, please. So it is really important that we start documenting climate change impacts on waste pickers, it's important to sensitize workers about climate, and all of that, it is the backbone of a just transition. And we do need to ensure that the climate change actions do not create new disadvantages for the informal economy, workers and communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sonia, for that really inspiring and practical presentation and showcasing some of WeGo's work. And I think we learned a lot about how climate vulnerabilities impact informal waste workers, but that often their invisibility in policy and planning documents at the local level, make them even more vulnerable because of the lack of support that they may provide. Provided from national government, local government, engagement with the private sector. But so your presentation helped to break down a lot of myths, I think, as well, that might be out there around informal waste workers and their contributions. And the fact that we really need to start moving towards a social enterprise model when it comes to waste, and that waste pickers cannot do that alone, and they need those active partnerships of their cooperations and associations with local government, NGOs, and the private sector. So thank you to both the presenters. We're now going to move to the Q&A part. And we already have a couple of questions posed for both of the speakers. And please do continue to add your questions. And even if we do not have time to answer them, we'll ensure that they do get answered after the session. Perhaps, I don't know, both of my panelists could look at the Q&A ones, and if it would help for me to triage some of these for the panelists. For example, Maksud, there's one question, maybe I can combine two questions from Gwen, which is talking about how you implement the source separation, and do you use the mechanized facility for separating the dry waste fractions, or is it labor intensive? Have you succeeded in integrating informal waste workers at your facilities?
Okay, thank you. In Bangladesh, we didn't have any solid waste management handling rule, which mentions that source segregation is very important. In the law, recently 2021, our government adopted a law, rule 2021, where it is clearly mentioned waste has to be segregated from the source, but it will take a long time to make it workable. So what we did in our, wherever we worked in the community, we try to encourage community with the leaflets and group meeting that they should segregate the waste. If you segregate the waste, it will, we can create more value out of waste. Because sometimes we find that due to lack of understanding, lack of awareness, people mix the waste at the source. But if you can separate it at the source, you can also enhance the value of the, always like plastic, a bottle. If you solve it with the food waste, it takes a lot of energy to clean and dry and then recycle. So this is one of the things we promote with an informal sector. They are involved in the collection of recyclables and also recycling of recyclables. In the informal industries are existing, and also individuals, informal waste collector, they're involved. So what we do in our recycling facility, we from the household, the rickshaw van, whenever they go in the community-based project, they try to source segregate, and then we have a secondary platform in the recycling facility, secondary sorting platform, where second time the sorting is done, and then it is separated and recycled. So that opportunity is there, and very small plants, 3 tons, less than 3-ton plant, we have manual. We cannot afford large mechanized system, but in the large projects and medium and large projects, we have introduced it's a semi-mechanized sorting. After initial sorting, plastics are sorted in different grades, and also inorganic, organic, those are sorted. We have conveyor belts and then sorting machines that we have introduced in our projects. So this is because in future in the solution will be different in different type of capacity. Like in the mega cities, if we have large projects, you have to depend on semi-mechanical or mechanical sorting. But very small community-based project, we can have a manual sorting. That thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Maksud. And we'll come back to how to tailor some of these modular solutions to different city typologies next. And I want to also, I see some questions for Sonia coming, but before that, we have a reflection from one of our Urban Act project cities, Tagbilaran in the Philippines, from Gerard Lavadia, who is the city's DRM officer. So Gerard, what resonated with you from the presentations from WeGo and Waste Concern, and how is Tagbilaran City addressing some of these issues around integrated resource recovery, source segregation, and integration of informal waste workers? If you could shed some experiences and perspectives. So Gerard, over to you. You are muted.
Thank you, Omar. Like our presenters just said, we do have a problem with waste in terms of how it contributes to the GHG emission in the city. In 2017, we made an inventory of our greenhouse gas, and the result was that waste itself contributes a third of the greenhouse gas emissions in the entire city. It is actually 11.35%. That was 2017, when Tagbilaran has not yet really come to a point that have developed such as what we have now. Now, one of the measures that we did was that through a local legislation, we made a plastic ordinance which bans the use of single-use plastic in all establishments. That is our method of reducing the waste from plastic products, and such legislation is being observed by all the department stores and malls. So we have strictly enforced this ordinance. Aside from that, of course, we have our solid waste actually goes to a sanitary landfill outside of the city. What we have in the city is a giant material recovery facility where we segregate waste materials from those that can be composted and those that can be recycled and those that are to be sent to the sanitary landfill. In the MRF facility, in the material recovery facility, we have a biocomposter and a shredder machine which shreds plastic and glass materials, so we can actually produce bricks out of these materials that can be used for buildings and pavements. As for the biocomposter, food waste can be fed into these machines, and then we can use the biocomposter for the production of fertilizers. But still, all these efforts towards managing our solid waste, I think is still really not yet that fully functioning well, since we really have to encourage segregation at the source, meaning from the household or the establishment level. And so, aside from that, by segregating, we have to incentivize those who are actually doing the segregation themselves. Now, our ideas coming from our previous two speakers are very helpful to us. The concepts itself from the first and the second speaker are enlightening, that shows us that there can be actually measures that can be done to improve our solid waste management and to reduce our greenhouse gas emission from such. But we do need further technical assistance on how this can be done. And I hope that Urban Act can actually take concrete steps towards providing cities like ours the needed technical assistance in ensuring that we have programs that uh, do not just reduce GHG from solid waste, but also provide livelihood to our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerard. And I think a common theme that is coming out of our discussion today is the importance of segregation of source, but also throughout the entire value chain of waste, and how it is so fundamental for these technological solutions to be enabled as well by policies. And you mentioned that there are certain bans of certain types of waste products on the market there, and we'll come back to that. But related to the point of segregation, Sonia, I hope you can still hear me. Your connection is stable. Sonia? Okay, I think Sonia has had some connection issues. So let me move to Maksud for the next question related. One is from the Department of Interior and Local Government, DILG in the Philippines. Maksud, the question is, locally in the Philippines, there are practices of prohibiting the use of cellophanes, but it seems this is not enough. The local governments are proposing for sanitary landfill because dump sites had already closed and are punishable. And as a matter of transition, the temporary containment areas are considered for the meantime because installing SLF is very costly. There was a proposal of installing an SLF by the neighboring cities who can afford it, but still this is not one among the priorities at hand. Again, because of budgetary constraints, there were INGOs programming carbon credit projects, more on tree planting and the like. Now, the question is, Maksud, can these foreign donor countries think of including sanitary landfill as one of the menu and carbon credit projects, aside from initiatives such as tree planting and beautification? So the question is around sanitary landfill and the use of carbon credits from your experience. Maksud? Maksud, you're still muted. Oh, I think he has left. Well, colleagues, we seem to have some technical difficulties with both of the speakers' connections. So let me then just take this opportunity then to thank all of the speakers, but also all of you for answering the questions. I see Maksud.
Mr. Maksud is back. Yeah.
Yes. Maksud,
sorry, my connection was off somehow. So I'm now here again. Please, can you repeat the question briefly?
Yes.
So that you can answer.
What do you think about including sanitary landfills as one of the menu and carbon credit projects? So this question about sanitary landfills and the financing of those through carbon credits, for example, including through vertical climate funds. What has been your experience on that? And this question is coming from the national government in the Philippines, the Department of Interior and Local Government.
Okay. I can share our local experience, because if you look at the presentation, we showed you that we were promoting integrated resource recovery facility initially, but later we found that you need to have some also every town must have a landfill, but it should be somehow controlled, or sanitary is more expensive, but controlled landfill integrated with a recycling facility. Some portion of the reject will also always go to the landfill, sanitary or control landfill. So if you can have a gas extraction system, methane gas extraction system, you can have a landfill gas project, which can be a CDM project. Because in an open dump site, you cannot have this kind of carbon credit project. But if you, the donors, the investor, like the Paris alignment, you'll find that they have clearly mentioned that you have to have a controlled landfill site or a sanitary landfill site. You cannot dump your waste in an open landfill where they will not invest money on that. So international banks will be only interested if you have those kind of controlled landfill or sanitary landfill where recycling is present. So if you have a landfill site, you must convert it into a controlled or sanitary, and it can be, if you can integrate, you can prove that how much waste you are diverted and how much waste from the waste you have capped, you have extracted the methane, and then you can claim that carbon credit from that. So this is our experience. So in Bangladesh, although we had one project, which was landfill gas project for Dhaka city, but we could not, after registration also, we could not implement it, but this was a very good project. So this kind of project we can also promote, but sanitary landfill, if the project is focused on sanitary landfill, it will be expensive for any town. You have to think about diverting large portion of the waste from the landfill. Small amount of waste, you can have a control or sanitary landfill, which you can afford. But all the waste, if you take it to the sanitary landfill, it will be expensive for any these developing countries, cities. Yeah.
Thank you, Maqsood. We have a lot of questions regarding the capacities, the infrastructure, the behavioral change, even at the household level with regard to waste separation. The questions are around how you build capacities of local authorities for waste separation, what's the best approach to start with to have an efficient system of waste separation in municipalities?
The best thing would be if you don't have a legal framework. No, in the absence of any legal framework, it is difficult to encourage population to go for this kind of segregation, because it happened in Bangladesh. In absence of this kind of legal basis, we promoted source segregation. People segregated the waste, sometimes inspired people who are more aware people, but they found that end of the day, their waste is getting mixed up in the waste bin and the truck, and it is going to the landfill mixed up. So this is the way that you have to think about the collection, transportation, and disposal. The system should be having a segregated type of thing. Otherwise, people will not be encouraged. And another thing is that one is awareness. People, you can make aware people, so you can create value. You can, if it is the waste is not contaminated, if the waste is not mixed with other contaminated waste, so you can create value. Another thing is that enforcement. Sometimes we think that it is not workable, but sometimes in our regulation, our government has also instructed the municipality and city corporation that they must promote segregation and they collect the waste separately. So this instruction is there. Whether they are following it or not, this is the next concern. But at least you must have some black and white regulation, and along with that, massive awareness program. We work with the local authority, municipalities, the cleaners, and the informal sector. We are training them locally in the local municipality with the local government engineering department, and also the local municipalities, along with, and all the waste workers are made aware about the concern of segregation. If they deal with mixed waste, sometimes biomedical waste. In a community, you have a lot of hospitals, clinics. So you have to make them aware that a 2% or 3% of the medical waste, it is responsible for this kind of, like we had COVID a few years back. So it was a concern for everyone. So we have to be promoting this small, even if the country may be poor, the towns can be not solvent, but source segregation is very important for the health and environment for the city and towns. Thank you.
Thank you, Maksud. And unfortunately, Sonia from WeGo has not been able to resolve, I see her technology difficulties and rejoin the meeting, but we'll make sure all of the questions get to her as well as to you, Maksud. We are over time. I wanted to ask one specific closing question to you, Maksud, before we end today's session. Is we all know that globally member states are negotiating a very new ambitious plastic waste pollution treaty. And this is going on now as we speak, also at the UNEA, the United Nations Environment Assembly, happening now in Nairobi. Maksud, if you were the chief negotiator for your country now in that waste management, plastic waste management treaty, what would be some of the key things that you would be pushing for that treaty to include? Over.
So maybe it's a coincidence. We are engaged by our national government to prepare the national guideline on extended producer responsibility. It means that the concept of producers the polluter must pay. That is the concept. You're doing your business, but at the cost of our health and water pollution and this environmental pollution. So the good thing is that we consulted with these kind of producers, manufacturers, and brand owners, because we did a study for Bangladesh. We did a study that packaging materials are growing in a large proportion. And because it is good for our society environment, but it is polluting our environment. Because it is convenient, it's economically good. And these recently, last 15 years, we found that huge amount of packaging material, non-recyclable packaging material, which cannot be recycled by our informal sector, industry, and they end up with the water body and ocean. So what we did that, we helped our government to sit with the manufacturers, producer, brand owners. This is very important. The polluters must be involved, and they must be involved also to contribute to the solution, innovation and solution. They can give the better solution than the government, the producer, if they have some bindings. So what we did that, our government is giving them some target, and they're asking a plan from them. So EPR, I think one of the key, extended producer responsibility, involving people so that they can contribute money to solve the problem, because a lot of poor towns and cities, they cannot afford for this kind of management. But we can harness that polluters has to pay, and then we can reduce this pollution a lot with implementation of extended producer responsibility. So in the GPT, Global Plastic Treaty, EPR is one of the important aspects they are discussing. I think it will be very helpful for our country also, the developing country, if you can implement EPR with the partnership with the polluters, manufacturers, brand owners, and these kind of importers.
Thank you so much, Maksud. And today's discussion really looked at the entire value chain of waste, I think, from producers to retailers to recyclers at the ground level. And I'd like to thank all the participants for the useful contributions and for joining us in the different time zones. Presentations and materials will be available from this webinar afterwards, and my colleagues have sent the registration link in the chat box for you to sign up to those. We'd like to invite you to our next webinar, which is on Wednesday, 27th of March, entitled An Untapped Frontier, Matchmaking and City-to-City Exchange for Climate Financing. We look forward to seeing all of you, because many of the solutions that we were talking about today for the waste sector need capital for implementation. And we want to look at ways that cities can enable that with different types of funders and innovating financing instruments as well. So we really look forward to seeing you at that next webinar. This is a key way for all of us to improve our knowledge and share experiences within and outside the region. Please fill out the survey that you can scan on the screen, and you'll receive it in the chat link and via email following the event as well, so we can continue to improve these webinars. And we're introducing a certificate of participation for the Climate Conscious Cities webinar series, showing attendance at the event. And if you'd like to receive that, please answer the 5 questions about the content of this webinar at the end of the survey. That is section 6. In order to receive a certificate, you need to fill out that survey. Thank you again for participating, and look forward to seeing you next month when we look at how we are going to finance the climate transition in cities through matchmaking approaches. Thank you so much, and look forward to your feedback, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
If the speakers and the panelists can please stay and turn on your photo so we can take a group photo, please.
Sure. I see Sonia has still not been able to rejoin, so.
Yeah, I think we can take with those who can stay and turn on. Liam, let us know if you can take
Maksud
the
and
photo.
Gerard, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just taking a screenshot now. I'm wondering, would it be good to scroll back to one of the earlier presentation slides, maybe?
Oh.
Maybe the opening slide or something could be good.
All good?
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Okay, perfect. All right. Okay. All right, thanks everyone. I've got the photos now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Maksud.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Gerard.
Bye.
Look forward to
Thank
visiting.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.